Welcome back, everyone, to 1YL or 1 Year Later. My name is Corey, and 1YL is a podcast amplifying the voices of people taking adversity into their own hands and changing their world and the world around them. And today we have a very special guest. We have the one and only Olivia Karras. Olivia, how are you, my friend?
I'm good. I'm cruising. What about you?
That's a good way to put it. I had a great morning, and we're just like now we get to chit chat about your last 365 days, and cruising is a great way to put it.
Yeah, I'm just cruising through.
I love it. I love it. Well, okay, guys, this show is not about accolades, but I'm going to give you a couple of who Olivia is and how I know her. Number one, she's my friend. Number two, she had a really awesome, cool, successful career at the University of Michigan, where she was a gymnast there. Um, she was very known, in my opinion, for how joyful she did gymnastics, how excited she was for her teammates, and fighting through an injury to her Achilles that she gained a lot of perspective from in a time when she could be really let down and be really frustrated with herself. She used it as inspiration to drive passion through the last part of her career, and it's a very inspiring story. But today we are not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about the last 365 days of her life, which was not in college. But I want to take us back to where you were 1 year ago. I believe you were living in a different state, in a new state. You had an incredible job that you still have, but a lot of transition happened there at the beginning. So, can you give everyone a little bit of insight into where were you 1 year ago, mentally, physically, emotionally, what was going through your mind, through your space, and just help everyone paint a picture of where you were.
Wow, loaded question. But yeah, okay, so 1 year ago, I was in New York City. I was living in Manhattan in the East Village. Something I've wanted to do my entire life was live in Manhattan and work in New York City. New York City is where you go, dreams are made of. And so I wanted to go to New York. It was always one of my goals. And I moved out there at the later part of 2019. And I found a job through a lot of connections between my head coach at Michigan, Bev Plocky, and she helped me connect with these people at this amazing company called Huge. It's a digital advertising agency. I love my job. I was so excited to start working there. And so a year ago, we were a little bit longer than a year ago. We were going into the office. I was starting this new position, first job out of college, learning so much in my 8 to 9 hour days there. And all of a sudden, right at the beginning of March, we get the Brooklyn team, like everyone come together and we have to have chat. And I'm like, oh gosh. And you're reading in the news that there's this coronavirus and there's stuff going on and things are closing down and the world is dirty. And I'm thinking, there's no way that this comes to New York. This is New York. New York will never change. People are always going to use the subway. People are always going to go out at midnight to meet friends. It's never going to change. And we have this meeting and they say, we're going to try working from home for the safety of our employees. And I'm thinking, I don't even how do you work from home? There's a beautiful office here. How am I supposed to sit in my tiny apartment and work there? And so we try working from home for about a week, we think. And they say, this is going to go on for longer than a week. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And so at this point, everyone's freaked by airlines, don't fly. Everyone's kind of nervous. And my best friend from grade school all the way through high school, he and his boyfriend live in Williamsburg in Brooklyn. And he texts me and he
Okay.
goes, we just rented a car. We're going to drive back to the Midwest. Do you want to come? And I was like, how much time do I have? And he was like, we're leaving at 5 tomorrow morning. I was like, okay. So I packed as much stuff as I could put in a duffel bag. And I went to Williamsburg to their place and we packed up the car and we left at 5 o'clock in the morning and we drove to New Buffalo, which is right at the border of Indiana and Michigan. He has a family house there. It's about an hour out of Chicago. So we grew up going to his place in the summer and swimming. And we stayed there for about a month. And then I went home to
Wow.
Chicago, and I've pretty much made that home base since.
Wow. And you're
Yeah,
still working from home. Like that idea of the fact that working from home was like such a foreign concept at the time is like now a very regular and like real thing. So like how have you been doing
yes.
with that? Has it been a challenge?
It's been a challenge more emotionally than physically. You know, my commute from my bed
Mhm.
to my couch is great. My work attire in my sweatpants that my dad hates, by the way. He always tells me you should like look nicer on your calls. I'm like, excuse me. I'm working from home. But I emotionally really struggled. And I think I'm finally getting over the hump of like the struggle with the daily purpose. You know, the purpose for a long time became working for sure, but there was not much of a change between home and work life. And I really struggled
Mhm.
with that because
Mhm.
gymnastics taught me to be a perfectionist and always to be looking on how to get better. And so when an email would come in at 8 o'clock at night that was meant to be answered in the morning, I'd go, well, I'm already on my computer. I might as well answer it now. And so the divide between what was happening during work hours and what was happening after hours, but I had nothing better to do that I might as well answer this email now became very unhealthy for me. Um,
Yeah.
and my everyone I think really struggle with that because you don't have this natural end or the commute time from work to home where you can decompress and meet up with some friends or go see family or go home and watch TV. Like you're always home. There's no separation. So I really struggled with that. And I would say that the beginning of 2021 is where I started to really conceptualize how to make myself emotionally okay to separate between
Mhm.
school, work, and life.
Yeah, yeah, it's huge. And so many people had to figure out what their new routines would be like. I mean, I'm even trying to find a new routine in my life right now, like with the opportunity for one of my favorite workouts to open up and have people inside with taking all the precautions. Right now, like it's an opportunity that I haven't had for an entire year. Like I look back on my stats of like my workouts there, and it's like I have there's a huge gap. Like all of 2020, the rest of 2020 from March until like literally 2 weeks ago, like there's just no stats, and it's like, okay, yeah. So in that, I've kind of turned it into a little bit more than just an absence of statistics. I've turned
Right.
it into, hey, in that time, I didn't really have a good routine. I also need to give myself grace for like being winded on the treadmill. I need to like
Totally.
there's a lot of like retrospective pieces of that I'm trying to have a little bit of patience with because I am totally winded at the end of these classes. And before quarantine happened, I was in a position where I was like, "Oh, what's something harder? Like I've figured this out." And so I say that all because I think that we all fell into that space of like what was once an incredible challenge for us is like a foreign concept today, but now there are new challenges just being presented by this new idea of what work is and what maintaining friendships looks like without, traveling a ton or going out at midnight in Manhattan or whatever it might be. Like, there are things that have had to change in order for us to figure out this new normal. And I think it's really cool to hear that you've kind of started to find your groove and find your routine. And as things start to open up, I'm sure that things will look a little bit different. But the next space I want to head towards is like obviously in this last year, um, you and I both emotionally um, were there for a lot of student athletes who had their season finish far too early and retirement far too early from the sport of gymnastics. And obviously, in the last 3 months, we've gotten the opportunity to hear and see gymnastics. You have had the opportunity to broadcast and be doing some remote broadcasting for the Big Ten Network, which has been so cool. And what I really want to talk about is that it's so awesome to me, and I'm sure you're hearing some other stuff too, but it's so awesome to me to hear people talk about how they love your positive commentary and your positive feedback for the sport, the student athletes in the sport of gymnastics. And it's been so cool to watch, and it's been so, like, I'm proud as a friend to know that, like, I
Thank
get to
you.
hear you speak in that way about these people. But what has it meant to you to get to see our sport be back on TV, to see these student athletes back competing? Obviously, from an emotional standpoint, knowing that there was such challenges this last year, that now they get to do what they love. Like, talk a little bit about how far they've come.
Oh my gosh. I was talking to I'm actually visiting some friends that played field hockey in college. And so we're all together right now on the West Coast. And we talked about it yesterday. And I can't conceptualize what those athletes felt like when someone walked in and said, your season's, you're done. Like, that just doesn't make any sense to me. My brain can't wrap around the fact that this, you can do everything right and something happens and there's no way you can fix it. These girls couldn't have stuck more landings. They couldn't have scored more goals. It just ended because of something that you couldn't control. And
Hmm.
no one will ever understand that unless you were in it. And it was really difficult to be a good friend at that point because the last thing you wanted to do was text your friends and reach out to them and say, how are you doing? Or it's okay. Like, no, it's not
Hmm.
okay. And they're not doing well. Like,
Hmm.
it's, I don't know what they went through, but I'm very proud of all of my friends that fought through that and are now either in coaching roles after their careers, are coming back after that year of not being able to train and getting themselves in the group. I mean, it's really inspiring and
Yes.
I'm proud of them. And, you know, I wouldn't be able to do one of my passions, which is commentating, if these young women didn't push through and have a season. And so at the
It's
end of the
true.
day, I get to do my job because they're badasses and made it through
Hmm.
this and put all of their energy and their passion into their sports to come back. And so I kind of try to think about it that way, where I'm like, I get to do this because of you. And
Hmm.
I will never understand what you went through to get here, but thank you. And thank you for bringing all of us like joy in sports. I mean, I think this year has been such a positive year in especially gymnastics.
Hmm.
People are much more invested in how impressive teams are this season, the buy-in from the
Absolutely.
gymnasts. Like there's just they've taken it to a whole new level. And of
Hmm.
course, I didn't want COVID to happen. And I didn't want these women who weren't given the opportunity to have another year and finish their careers off right. It breaks my heart for them. But the sport really went up a notch. And
Hmm.
I don't think
Hmm.
it's going to go back down. And so people
Hmm.
really need to understand that if you buy in, all in, these Kentuckys and Arizona States who people
Hmm.
would normally not pay attention to, they're like, hey, hello, hi, we put all this effort in too and look at how well we're doing. And so it's very
Yeah.
exciting to see so many people come out of the woodwork and just like they're just amazing. It's
Yeah.
awesome. But yeah, it's really been crazy to see what these athletes have gone through. Any sport, mask protocols, people taking safety very seriously, the level that people have reached in that regard, like masks right after routines. I mean, it's really nice to see, and it's great to see that it works so that they can compete and do their sport.
Totally, totally. So, in the spirit of this being about you and your emotions and your challenges of the last year, like, what did it mean to you to get asked back to commentate after a year of some emotional ups and downs, to then get asked to do something that really sets your heart on fire? Like, talk a little bit about that. I'll call it a turning point in the last year when you kind of got to put your head back down and study up on gymnastics and get to elevate the spirit of our sport using your voice and commentary. What did that mean to you?
Everything, really. I'm very fortunate that I was asked back to commentate. I commentated two meets in 2020, but I always wanted to do a Big Ten championship. The minute I completed my first Big Ten championship as a freshman, I was just in awe of what it would be like to talk about this experience and these women and just be in the action. And so that was
Yeah.
always a total like goal for me. Um,
Yeah.
the other turning point aspect of it that not a lot of people may know is that the Big Ten headquarters, the studio headquarters, is actually in Chicago, in my downtown, in my
Yeah.
hometown. And
Perfect.
when I was in New York, I would fly myself, fly back and do the commentary and fly back to New York in one day. I did this like
Hmm.
whole day trip to make sure I could be there. And the turning point really for me, as much as it really sucked to be back home with my parents when I was on my own in Manhattan, is that I was right around the corner from the studio. And so I
Yeah.
really was given the privilege. It's kind of like the silver lining in all of the come home and be without your own apartment and not on your own. I got the pleasure of getting to go into this office and having a place in Chicago, and the crew and everyone was really receptive to my commentary and very happy I was local, because then they didn't have to go through potential health risks to bring someone in. And so it all kind of, the stars aligned. And for that, I'm very grateful. And I would say a year ago, if you had told me, like, thank gosh you were in Chicago, I would have been like, you're joking, right? Like, I don't want to be home. I want to be
Yeah.
out in New York. And now I look back on it, I'm like, thank gosh I was in Chicago. So it's really
Totally.
interesting how that perspective changed so quickly. But
Yeah.
that made this reality happen for me, and I think it changed the entire like projection of my commentary career in that way.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. It was so fun. I mean, we went back and forth a lot this season just talking about how incredible the sport has, like, come to, and, I have to go out on a limb and say, like, maybe that 4 or 5 months of rest for student athletes this year was just what was necessary, um, but there is a lot of factors contributing to the incredible gymnastics that we're seeing and heading to the national championship next week. It's just so exciting just to see people getting to like accomplish dreams, even at this very point. It's just been so fun to see. But nonetheless, like I think the cool part about what you just said is that the retrospective idea of saying a year ago, if someone said, go back, live in Chicago, and you'll have this dream come true of eventually getting to commentate the Big Ten championships, like it's not really what your heart wanted in from a physical location, but what your heart wanted was to accomplish this dream. If it was a means to the end, like man, I think that we can just be really grateful and have a ton of like gratitude for what has happened, which I just think is really interesting. I'm so fascinated. I keep saying it. I'm so fascinated with the opportunity to really look back. And when we look back, there's so many moments when we really do deserve pats on our back that we never got from someone else, but we should give to ourselves because those were decisions that you made. You didn't have to get in that car in Williamsburg and drive back to the Midwest that day. You didn't have to. You could have decided that being in Manhattan was the most important part of your life, but you chose not to. And that choice dictated so many pieces of the puzzle of opportunities that you got to do this year that it's just so cool. It's like that picture, that painting of your life this year, I think can be so encouraging for so many people to look back and say, you know what, everyone needs to take a step back, take a big deep breath, and be able to identify what really is important. And what was important in that time, I would argue for you, was that you needed to be in a place where you felt safe physically, emotionally, and spiritually. And that was with your family, and that was in Chicago, and you needed to be there at that time. And look at the blessings that has come from it. And that's like the
Totally.
coolest thing ever.
And that's the crazy thing too, is I've never really sat here and thought about like, did I really, have to get in that car with them and go? And it's funny because when we were in the car, we kept saying like, we're going to tell people this story for years. We're going to be like, we
Hmm.
literally jumped in a car the night before, like we rented a car and jumped in a car and drove home. And it was a gorgeous drive. It was fun to be with my friends. Like that is one of those memories that at the time seemed like we were leaving everything we wanted, but instead we were driving to like a safer place and to kind of get away from the madness. And it ended up being really positive for all of us. And so, I mean, I get safely when you can figure out how to do things. Like, I get to see my grandma from a distance sometimes. She's vaccinated now, yay. So
Good.
hopefully,
Good.
we can all start to like see each other a little more frequently. But it's the blessing is also my grandmother and I are very close, and she's 92. And if I lived in New York, I would not be able to see her as much, even if it's from a distance, waving and saying hi. Like, that matters. And one
Yeah.
day I'm going to look back and go, I'm so glad I got that opportunity. And so there are silver
Mhm.
linings in all of it. It just comes down to, are you glass half empty or glass half full? And there were days
Yeah.
I was glass 3/4 empty, and there are days where I'm overflowing. And I think
Yeah.
that if you really think about what gives you the overflowing aspect, it's that we are given these experiences that we wouldn't have had if we were in
Yeah.
normal times.
Totally. Totally. Man, I'm encouraged by your story for sure. I mean, it's just so fun to kind of like, despite the many times that we did get to work together the last year in various opportunities, like even right before we hopped on this call, like I just want everyone to know, like we didn't talk about what we were gonna talk about on this interview. Like we're just trying to like show you guys that there's an opportunity for you to sit across the table from coffee with someone or hop on a Zoom call with a friend from afar and just ask some questions to be able to investigate some realizations and some really cool life moments that everyone should be encouraged by. And I know that I'm encouraged by Olivia's story, and I hope that you all are too. But it's just one of those. It's a moment in time when I think that it's really good for us to all have gain some perspective and look back and say like, wow, look how far we've come. And man, Liv, you have come so far and in so many spaces and so many different where you are physically, where you are emotionally, and to know you're a couple years out of college and you're able to just like keep your head up and keep smiling and bringing joy to people in the world around you is just really inspiring. So keep it up, my friend.
Thanks, Core. Appreciate you.
You're you're so welcome. Okay, so I have one last question for you. It's the question that I ask everyone as we end our time together. You can take a second with it, I promise. But
Okay.
it's deep, it's thought provoking. I want to know, did your 1 year ago self believe that you could be here 1 year later?
Oh gosh. Um, I'm gonna break it up into a couple things. Um, Emotionally, no. Emotionally, I definitely think that I was so invested with this idea of like New York or nothing, and it almost drove my other choices I made. And now when I think about it, I'm like okay without that right now. I'll go back at
Mhm,
some point and be very happy to be back, but I think a year ago, I don't think I could have emotionally accepted to not be in New York as a 23-year-old woman. So
mhm,
I'm going to say no emotionally. Also, no physically. I'm physically right now in Huntington Beach, California. I would not physically be here right now if it was a year ago and things had, a year ago there would be no way. I'm here with two of my best friends. I get to see these women that I don't get to see very often. So physically, no shot. And that's what's crazy when people say like give it time, things will change. You just kind of go like whatever, like it's legit. And so I would
yeah,
definitely say physically and emotionally, no way. Career wise, I always feel like I'm aspiring for what's next. Um, that was always how I've been. I've always been the type of person who is looking for something that'll inspire me next. And I want to say that I thought that I would challenge myself more in a year. The roadblock
mhm,
of COVID definitely gave me some bumps in the road of, can I
mhm,
push through this career wise in a remote setting? Will I still love what I do in a year? And the answer to that is yes, I do still love what I do. And I think I love it even
mhm,
more now that I've been
mhm,
given more opportunities to go into the space of gymnastics and to be in the space of PR and communications and writing. Like I, I'm glad where I am, and I think I definitely could get here. I don't think in 1 year's time I believed I could be where I am right now. I definitely think
Yeah.
in this last year, I pushed myself a lot in terms of my career, and I'm really proud of myself for it because I definitely stepped out of my comfort zone and tried new things. So yeah, I would say more on the side of no to all of them, but I'm unbelievably grateful and glad I am here. So
Yeah.
I'm thinking about in March of 2022 where the heck I'm gonna be. So now I have my
Yep.
brain thinking about that. And so I don't know, this whole thinking back and thinking how you were a year ago, like I don't even know that girl anymore. She was like
Mm.
freaked out to be leaving this new place. And now I feel like I can just like walk into a place and be like, I'm ready. So
Yeah, totally.
it's good.
Well,
Yeah,
I love it. I'm watching you process, and it's cool to just, like, see the wheels spinning and to, I hope that in the coming days, you continue to have really cool thoughts about where you've come from, and quite frankly, you mentioned March 2022, like, I think it would be so awesome to be 1 year from today and get back up here on 1YL and chat about what the last year would have looked like and will look like, so, keep that in mind, and I'll hit you up next April, and we will get to get a little chat on about it.
well, I hope we chat before next April, but definitely.
That's absolutely true. It's absolutely it just won't be as public.
Right, right, of
Well
course.
Liv, thank you so much for being on here today. I hope you get some time to go and jump in the waves down here in Southern California, where
Yes.
the Southern California welcomes you with open arms, and we hope that you stay for a very long time. But I
Thank
know
you,
while you're
Cal.
here, yes, enjoy it, enjoy it, enjoy it, and, yeah, man, this is gonna be so inspiring for so many people to listen to your story, so thank you for
Well,
being
for
on.
sure.
You're welcome, and
And
until
thank
next
you for
time.
making this space for us. This is such an awesome opportunity, so thanks for doing this.
Oh, heck yeah, it's fun. I mean, I selfishly, like, I get to talk to my friends, and then, selflessly, I get to show everyone what our conversation sounded like and got to be like, and, I think it's really encouraging some people, so I'm really excited with it.
Good.
Okay. Well, Liv, and everyone here watching, we are going to sign out for today, but make sure to tune in back tomorrow. We have a very special guest on again, just like every day in the month of April. We are bringing to you really special people who have really inspiring stories. So keep tuning in. Grateful for all of you guys listening, and make sure that you spend some time thinking about what your last year has been, because as you can tell from this conversation, when you take some time to be retrospective, you never know what kind of gold nuggets you could pull out of your life. So keep it up, everyone. And until then, we will see you tomorrow. Bye, guys.